Today's video is brought to you by me and my family-owned and operated small business.
What's happening? What is happening here? Hey, what's going on, loungers? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Mason T, and I am a 20+ year importer and product developer. So recently, we've got a huge surge of new viewership on the channel, and for that, I am very, very thankful. So actually, this channel is in its infancy stages, and you can see that we only have about 60 videos in the whole channel itself. Now, what I want to do is give you just a little bit of a backstory of how this channel started and why we do what we do over here, okay, for all of the new faces that are joining us. So as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, whenever I enter a new space, I try to be very mindful of what I'm doing. So it doesn't matter if it's a new conversation or I'm launching a new product, we want to bring value to the table. That way it's worth my time doing it as well as your time receiving it. So when you think of exactly the e-commerce space starting point, it's usually going to be platforms like eBay. However, eBay's conversation on YouTube right now is 99.9% dominated by just what reselling is. And I thought to myself, well, what happened to all of the other different kinds of strategies and structures that's not being represented right now on YouTube? So if you ever had a feeling of burnout, if you ever had criticisms of like the caps and the bottlenecks and stuff like that, but the problem is that because the conversation is 99.9% all about just reselling, this creates a very tight-knit type of echo chamber. So the moment you have criticisms, the moment you want to point something out, people come at you with torches and pitchforks. And I'm here to tell you guys that your feelings are actually very, very valid and not to ignore those feelings. So when you resonate with the message that I'm saying over here, I am so glad that we have found each other and you are in the right place. So today's video is a lesson specifically about business structures, okay? So what I want to do is that I want to introduce you guys to the 5 levels of e-commerce that is available out there to you guys. What we're doing in this video is to open your eyes to all of the options that's actually out there that's being gatekept from you, right? So the only thing that you'll see missing right now at a glance is dropshipping. I don't like to talk about dropshipping because half the people who are doing dropshipping are doing it illegally, meaning that it is against the policy, the platform's policy, all right? So at any time they could be banned. Just for that reason alone, I would say don't get into this, but I decided to create it anyway so you guys can take a screenshot of this video so that you can see there's a lot of red X's, a lot of red flags. All right. So let's talk about exactly what the different levels are. Just a quick overview, okay? So you have flipping and reselling, and then level 2 would be home or self-made goods, right? This level is pretty cool because you start being your own supplier because you create your own stuff. Of course, this is going to require a lot of product knowledge, but look, if you are a flipper or a reseller, this is not a problem to you. How many brands have you memorized already, you know? So product knowledge is really not that big of an issue. Instead, if you are doing home and self-made goods and you have no problems picking up a new skill or you already have one, then you could consider, creating your own and marketing that and start building a business around it. And I will show you how. So the next level would be wholesale distribution. I know some of you guys, you don't want to make something, right? You just want to buy something and sell something. You like the idea of the reselling model, but how could I properly scale it? Well, the answer is to change the strategy first. That way we could focus on scaling the volume. Otherwise, if you remain as just flipping and reselling, then the only option for you that's a viable option is to scale the value of the item. And we will get into that in a second. Then it comes into white labeling and then finally private and custom labeling, right? For the super nerds out there who are super technical, right? The Simpsons guy, worst episode ever.
Worst episode ever.
I'm very well aware that private labeling and custom labeling and white labeling, the different terminologies. So let me just go through it real quick. White labeling specifically means the factory already has produced goods. You could go ahead and go through their catalog and then select which ones that you want and then go ahead and slap your name on that thing. That's what white labeling is. That's it, right? Other people's goods with your name on it. Then let's get into the nuance of what private and custom label is. Because the nuance is very, very close. So many times people use the words interchangeably, you know what I mean? But if we had to be super specific about it, then private labeling is just a little step above what white labeling is. And, you know, to be specific, it means that I could now change the color, change the size, change up the packaging, you know, little things, right? So I have a little more creative control over the product. And then there's custom labeling, which is full creative control, right? They made exactly everything to my spec. The material, the functions, all that stuff. My whole design, the ergonomics behind it is 100% my idea. So that's what private and custom labeling is. So many times people use it interchangeably. So sometimes when I say private labeling on this channel or custom labeling on this channel, I mean kind of sort of the same thing. It's just, you know, arguing of semantics. I just wanted to say that I do know the difference, so don't try to bust me on that. Okay, so the reason why white labeling and custom labeling is level 4 and 5 is for one harsh truth. Blanket statement coming. We don't make anything in the United States. Let's just be honest, right? Because things that we do make in the United States still has a lot of overseas parts into it. And that's the problem. Sure, there are certain things like, you know, we grow, we have cattle, we have our own beef, we grow soybeans and stuff like that. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about predominantly, you know, 85, 90% of all the plastic goods, the electronics and all sorts of things, sewn items and stuff come from overseas countries, right? So when you talk about white labeling and private labeling, the reason why they're at number 4 and 5 is because they usually involve importing and dealing with other people. So there's a lot more complexity involved, as well as the accessibility on this, because they're a lot more difficult to do and they have a lot more startup costs. And that's why they're all the way to the right. So for the rest of you guys who want to pivot away from flipping and reselling to a better strategy, level 2 and level 3 is something I highly recommend for you to start off with first, because it's still very domestic. Okay, so in order to properly discuss what is going on over here, okay, we're going to try to remove the distraction a little bit and just talk about level 1 first, because that's where everybody currently is. That is the most relatable thing. And we are going to go through the features of every business. I try to be very methodical in my approach because I don't want to misrepresent things. The whole purpose of this channel is to combat misinformation. How ironic would it be if we just put out more information that is false, right? So let's talk about exactly all of the different features of a business that is most relevant without any redundancy in it. First, we're going to talk about the business control and growth aspect of every single structure, okay? So let's talk about creative control. You didn't create the product when we are talking about one-off reselling, flipping items, right? So of course you have no creative control over the item. So that gets a red X. Then we have active marketing. What does that mean? When you put up a listing on eBay, what is happening? You are waiting at the bus stop for the next bus to come, which is a customer to pick up your item, right? So it's very passive what's happening. Basically, you know, you put a for sale sign on the yard, that's it. And then whoever is interested is whoever is interested. Active marketing would be the equivalent of having a guy outside with a sandwich board, right? Saying hot dogs, hamburgers, you know what I mean? Like trying to get the attention of people to pick up more business. So when you have active marketing, you have a reason to start up, you know, TikTok accounts, Instagram accounts, to try to build a following to drive more business to your channel. And that's what active marketing is all about. If you are in the one-off item reseller space, you don't really have a reason to do this, nor if you actually did this, is it worth your efforts to do that? And that's why it gets a red X. So product exclusivity. You guys already know what's going on here. You pick up some Levi's Rock Revival jeans or whatever. Sure, it's a decent flip. However, it's not like there are not other people who likely have the exact same size, model, SKU, color, everything, right? So when your product doesn't have any product exclusivity and a lot of other people are selling it, there's competition. And the problem with competition is that it's usually a race to the bottom, especially if you guys are selling the exact same item. So what is the differentiation between us, right? Let's say you are a top-rated seller and so is he. Now what? Usually it's going to become a price war. And the price war could happen in two ways. Either we're going to see who could go a little bit cheaper, or we're going to not budge on the price, but put a little bit more in the promoted ads. But either way, it's diminishing on your end. So either what, I make less money or I give up less margins. either way, the margins are dwindling on this when there is no product exclusivity. The next one is called niche targeting, right? This is a very interesting one because what happens is whatever you're doing with the one-off item, right? They're already preset by the market. If you're doing clothing, your niche is clothing. And then I want to do men's clothing. Now we niche down even more specific to men's clothing. I'm selling Hoka shoes. Now it's men's clothing, sneakers, right? Same thing with jeans and stuff. But if you were to create a business where you actually have creative control, you have branding and stuff, you could reposition yourself to focus different kinds of audience members and possibly even create your own audience groups. And what's good about that is that it gives you a chance to start becoming what? Big fish in a small pond, as opposed to small fish lost in a sea of competition. Because once you found your audience, right? There was an episode that I was talking about where this company was trying to do like, healthy versions of Slim Jims. And the way they started off marketing is that they found the keto paleo group. So they had their target audience, and then after they start marketing to them, they made some money. And with the money, it opened up even more options. And now they are widespread. The company is called Chomps. You could find them today, even in Costco. Anyways, so the financials and profitability, right? Let's talk about the profit margins of flipping and reselling. One word to describe it: inconsistent. Any flipper reseller will tell you, right? When I go out and I source things, I don't intentionally try to source duds. I try to look for stuff that I believe is going to sell. And a portion of them are going to be regular flips. A portion of them is going to be duds. And a portion is going to be some gems, right? The question is, how often, what is the ratio of these things happening? And you'll probably find a lot of people leaving comments below of, really honest comments of what happened to them, right? And like I said, do not ignore these feelings. Let's be very mindful of what the truth is out there. Okay, so let's move on to investment and risk. Clearly, right? It's the lowest, right? We call this the barrier entry level, right? And what that means is if everybody can do it, then everybody's going to do it, right? So basically, if anybody can do it, then everybody is going to do it. That's the problem. So how do you start off when flipping and reselling? They tell you to grab a couple of things from home, try to sell that. And then once you've sold that, take the money and then go buy something at thrift places, flea markets, garage sales and stuff, and then try to sell that as well. And then you try to double and triple your money from there. The problem is that essentially there's a scalability problem, right? Because how many times can you double up exactly what you're doing? Let's say you're doing a pair of shoes, right? So I went from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8, 16, 32. You know what I mean? Once we get to 5, 12, 10, 24 stuff, we're doubling. It becomes physically impossible for us. And this is why my argument for flipping is that eventually you want to start flipping higher ticket items, because when you flip higher ticket items, you are dealing with less inventory, right? But you are still maintaining, if not making more, because of the ticket of the item. And this is why people who truly flip go from flipping, everyday items to luxury items, and then from luxury items to larger items such as cars, and then ultimately houses. When you see somebody flipping a house, they're usually flipping one house at a time, which is the idea of dealing with one SKU at a time, as opposed to having a warehouse full of 5,000 SKUs, right? Okay, so we've covered into replenishable listings, right? If you're dealing with one-off items, you don't have replenishable listings. And the problem with this is that without replenishable listings, you are technically never, ever, ever going to be aligned with any type of e-commerce platform.
Sometimes small true, different than the big true.
And the reason is every single e-commerce platform prioritizes one thing and one thing only, which is conversion rates. Conversion rates are more organic than what we actually think they are. If I had to go ahead and explain the algorithm to somebody, right, the simplest thing is to understand that algorithms are just a list of instructions. End of story. If your mama was to give you a little recipe card for how she makes her, pancakes or muffins or something like that, that is an algorithm. 2 eggs, milk, how many cups of flour, sugar, et cetera, et cetera. That is an algorithm. They're a list of instructions for you to follow. So whether we feed them to a bot, feed them to a server, a computer, a software program, or whatever. That's what an algorithm is. Once you start thinking like that, it's like, oh, it's so simplistic. What is a market or a marketplace? Because the algorithm is dictated by the marketplace. We make it sound like this faceless entity. Actually, the marketplace is what? It's filled with people. It's just people. So people dictate how the algorithm actually works. So what do I mean by this? When you're selling things and trying to be more aligned with the algorithm, you want to sell things that are SEO friendly yet SEO popular, because that is what the human behavior is. That's what the traffic is happening on all of these e-commerce platforms. So if you don't have replenishable listings to sell over and over again in order to prove a track record of your listing, there is no reason for the algorithm to recognize your listing and then push it forward all the way to the front, right? Because when people buy stuff, one of the biggest factors to buy something, right, is social confirmation. Think about it, right? I want to buy something like wireless earbuds that are Bluetooth and waterproof at the same time. Show me what you got, because I'm not very picky on the brand right now. Maybe I want it in black, maybe I want it in white. You know, I'm not too picky about it, but I want to go with the best match ones. I want to go with the highest review ones. Why? Because 5,000 other people bought it, right? 5,000 people bought it, and there's no issues, and they all said great things about it. Now I want to jump in. I don't want to be the early adopter. I just want to follow what other people are doing, because I just don't want any headaches. I just want a good product that I could take on the plane and it's reliable because it worked for 5,000 other people. So why wouldn't it work for me? That is a huge factor. So that's why those things get pushed all the way to the front, because the likelihood of conversion. Time is money. So when a shopper, most likely somebody like what I just described, comes on and says, look, I don't have a lot of time to waste. I don't want to go through 100 pages of stuff. I'm not trying to binge shop. I just want these Bluetooth headsets or these earbuds, right? So show me what's the best one. What's everybody buying? And I'm just going to be super basic about it. I'm going to get that one. Amazon, eBay converts the sale instantly. That's what they're looking for. And that's why those things get pushed to the front, because of the algorithm. And that's how the whole business model works. So if your business doesn't align with the nature of that, your business is not aligned with the algorithm, period. And that's why flipping and reselling is so difficult, because you are working an uphill battle because you're not aligned. Your sales are not full of wind because you're pushing in the wrong direction.
The only exception would be replenishable listings that you just have so many of. You can list on all the platforms because there is no management of the listings. You can just post it and then it goes until it goes.
Okay, so let's talk about bulk sourcing and production on this, right? Sure, you could always go out and source like a whole bunch of items, but if you go too fast and not by case basis, you're not going to get like the quality items, right? Because you can't just buy things blindly. However, when you are dealing with bulk source proven items, or you are producing your own items and you're producing like your most hot selling items, you already know they're going to go, right? So when you go buy, bulk sourcing and production and stuff like that, you have the option to do so, and you would only do it with minimal risk because you've already proven the item first. So this is something that just doesn't happen in the world of flipping and reselling, because you're always trying something new. You're always in that trial and error stage of another new item. Next is inventory management, right? So when you think of inventory management, it is very difficult in flipping and reselling. If you have 2,000 items, then you have 2,000 SKUs. And the way you have to store them is in a way where every single one has to be accessible to you at all times, because you don't know which one is going to sell in the next hour, right? However, every single other business, when you think about it, where they have bulk supply of stuff, what happens? I have this whole section dedicated to just this one SKU, and I can stack them on top of each other as well as in front of each other, because I don't have to be able to access all of them. I just have to be able to grab the ones in the front and then work my way down to, diminishing the whole inventory, right? So the way you set things up, plus, the way that you're selling things, okay, instead of having 500 different kinds of things, right, that I'm all trying to sell one by one, I just have one SKU, 500 units of it sitting there, and it's moving for me like a 10 a day. So whole different ball game when you have that kind of inventory management. All right. So let's go into long-term viability as far as sustainability, brand building, and customer following. You don't have that, period, right? You don't have much sustainability here because you are subsidizing what the business is. You are the engine to the business as opposed to just being a designer of engines. That's what I actually want for you guys. So many times you'll see people talk, anecdotally, right? My business is dipping because, I'm not doing draft banks and stuff like that. It gets, into crazy talk when the truth is what? If you buy an item and it sells, now I have to replace it. If I buy an item and it doesn't sell, I still have to replace it because I got to maintain that sales flow, right? So it's very up and down. And the moment that I stop, the business starts to plummet, okay? So when you think of a bakery, and the reason why I use a bakery is because the goods are very perishable, right? If you don't eat bread, fresh bread bought from a bakery, like an artisan type or whatever, 3 days goes by, there's a lot of mold on that thing, whether you see it or not, right? So we can't sell this thing anymore. So if you go ahead and you are a baker and you are the only baker of this bakery and you take a vacation for like 2 weeks or whatever, what happens? The business comes to a complete halt. So when you think about sustainability, let's think about a house that is a self-sustainable house. What does that mean? It probably has solar panels. It's probably got a rain catch. There's a lot of things about this house where it doesn't need external utilities because it takes care of itself. And that's what we really want to build when we're building a business. So sustainability is very important. And you actually don't have that in flipping and reselling because you are constantly trying to maintain the sales with elbow grease. So brand building, right? Yeah, you're not selling your own products. You're not selling, you're selling other people's brand. End of story. Customer following, there's no reason to actively, promote your store. So you are doing a whole bunch of, yard sales in the front. People buy it, people got what they needed, and people kind of don't remember you. So that is the problem with this whole business model. Okay, so we covered the whole flipping and reselling here. Now you could really see that, wow, this is very limited. And if that's what you're currently doing right now, look, there's no shame in it. Everybody needs to start somewhere. But again, as I said, you're not supposed to do the warm-up exercise forever. You're not supposed to play the tutorial forever. At some point, we got to start progressing in the game. So let's talk about your new options that I recommend for you guys to pivot initially. Okay, so the next progression of business structures is actually going to be level 2 or level 3. And you could choose either one to pivot into after you've done some flipping and reselling because you've built the basic muscle in order to do so. So people are divided pretty much into 2 basic groups, right? Even though we're all on a spectrum of how we feel, but when you think about introverted versus extroverted, those are the 2 main groups of people. So if you're more introverted, home self-made goods is perfect for you. Now, wholesale distribution is actually going to require you to be more of an extrovert, right? Because it's all about dealing with people and making those connections and relationships. So home self-made goods are for people who are okay with making their own stuff because the good part about this is that so many options open up for you. When you look at the green check marks versus the red X's over here, it's complete night and day, right? You basically unlock all of the abilities to any type of, e-commerce type of business. Now, wholesale distribution are people what? I don't want to make stuff. I enjoy what I was doing before with the flipping and reselling stuff, right? I like to look for products, try to figure out a good product, and then just sell from there. I don't want to be bothered, with having a workshop at home and stuff like that. Cool, I got you. So wholesale distribution is the only way that you could start going from a reseller and start scaling up your volume properly, okay? So you have to switch over to this business structure, this type of business model in order to do that. Now, the biggest question about wholesale distribution is, what do I do with the sourcing, right? How do I get these sourcings and stuff like that? So we will go into more granular videos for every single one of these models, okay? And the reason is because if I did that right now, then the video would just be way too long. However, I will, over the weeks, right, on every single Sunday, I think I will do, a full video on home self-made goods, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. And then eventually, I think I'll just stitch all of them together for one big episode for anybody who just wants to binge the whole thing at one time, okay? So I'll put that together for you guys. Now, let's talk about home self-made goods first, right? I know there's going to be a couple of naysayers out there. They're like, Peg, really? Home self-made goods or whatever? Okay, fine. Maybe this video will shut you up.
Today's video is brought to you by me and my family-owned and operated small business.
What's
Kind
happening?
and Natty.
What is happening
Our
here?
most popular products include our
I
cinnamon
love this
glazed
for her.
carnival nuts. This includes our signature flavored pecans, almonds, cashews, and peanuts.
You know what is awesome about what she's doing right now? You know, first of all, Lindey Glen is an entirely different beast on her own, right? Because she has a huge following and everything that she's doing right now makes perfect sense. The way the economy and everything that's happening with the tariffs right now, this business is kind of sort of tariff proof, right? Because she's making her own stuff domestically here. So that's got nothing to do with her. So this is an excellent move. But moreover, on top of that, this is a very universal item for everybody. Who doesn't like candy? If I had it my way, I would just eat candy all day, right? So the thing is that if I wanted to support her, because actually I'm kind of a fan of Lindey, and I want to say, look, I want to support her channel. I want to support her family and stuff like that. Let me go over there and pick up a couple of taffies or the chocolate covered pretzels or something like that. I definitely want to see if she has some sugar-free versions, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. She has full creative control over her product. So if people, get up in her face and be like, do you have any vegan options and stuff, that she could actually consider that for people and make that happen for them. Now, what I'm seeing over here is most likely a Shopify website, and I'm personally not a big fan of Shopify. And the reason is because I think their pricing structure is a little bit scammy, and the thing is that when you sign up for things like, Shopify, the initial sign up is very, very cheap. However, to make your site all pretty and stuff, and then to have the special abilities like, abandoned shopping carts and things like that, those are all plugins that they sell you on the side, right? So what is it like? It's kind of like getting a car, a very basic car, and then if you want the mirrors, if you want the windows, if you want the tires, it's all extra on top of it. And these things actually kind of add up. But Lindey is different, all right, because she already has a huge following, so she could just hit the ground running. For the rest of us, if you are first starting off a brand new business and you don't have that proven item and you don't have that following just yet, right, then I would recommend that you just WordPress, because WordPress is probably the cheapest way to go, right? I think my philosophy is, stay small enough, long enough, and you'll be big enough soon enough. So when you're doing things like WordPress, I actually recommend two guys on YouTube, right? One is Darren Wilson and the other one is NYC Tech Club. They make excellent videos that you could basically learn how to fully WordPress in just over a weekend. Honestly, there's a lot of different types of templates out there in order to make a website, but what really makes a website is wonderful, beautiful photos, okay? Once you have really good photos to fill up what the template is, it's what really makes the website come alive. So even though templates are important, the photos are probably 90% of, pulling the heavy weight, right? So let's see what else she has over here.
We also have other sweet treats like a variety of dipped nuts, as well as a wide variety of saltwater taffies.
Right, it's gonna be so easy to support her on this because anybody could just pick up some nuts or taffy or whatever, right? I think her business has a lot of potential to even pick up more sales during times of like Halloween and Valentine's Day. There's just so many more options that open up as opposed to being a reseller. And the reason why I pick Lindey is because this is what's most relatable to everybody, right? Don't give me any naysayers or whatever. She was a reseller too, and let this be an inspiration for you as well. So I hope you guys can understand that level 2 is actually not bad at all. There's a lot of different genres that you could go into. We will do a whole episode of like maybe, 7 or 8 categories that I could recommend for you guys, right? Some of the stuff that comes off the top of my head right now is probably like the health and wellness stuff, whether it's like, shampoos, soaps, bath bombs, things like that. I actually have a whole Etsy episode on specifically about candle making. Now, it's not so much that I want everybody to just become candle makers. It is about the whole thought process from the lens of an entrepreneur. When I think about if I had to start this business, how would I get into it? How do I get the equipment? Where do I get the tutorials from? What do I need to learn? And how do I start thinking ahead as a business owner? Eventually, I want everybody to be less technician and more captain of their business, right? So when we talk about the home self-made goods and stuff, other than like the health and wellness things, maybe you could get into baking as well, right? A lot of people do breads, cookies, things like that, because those things are very easily shippable to other people, as well as jams or jellies. You see Lindey is doing like the candy and the nut stuff, right? All great ideas. For some of the fellas out there who might want to get into this stuff as well, but you don't want to do the baking or, making like sweet smelling candles and stuff like that, then you could consider things like woodworking or 3D printing, as well as maybe some kind of leather work or other kinds of durable things, right? Like stuff made out of kydex. You'd be surprised how well sheaths and like holsters and stuff sell on all of these websites. So if you're good with your hands and you're willing to learn some skills and stuff like that, you could definitely start looking into home self-made goods. Again, we will do a full episode on home self-made goods, how to get into it, and great categories for you guys to consider doing stuff like that. Now, let's cover wholesale distribution, okay? The biggest question about wholesale distribution, again, where do I get the sourcing, right? How do I make these connections? What do I do? I'll do a full episode on this, and then we'll talk about all sorts of different options that you could do as far as acquiring resources and listings and directories and stuff, so that you could start making those connections yourself, as well as picking your niche of the types of things that you would like to distribute, and then we can go from there. Now, let's talk a little bit about the other levels. Now, level 4 and level 5 is of the highest complexity. And the reason is because, let's face it, we don't really make many things in this country, okay? As far as all the tangible goods that we want to deal with when selling them online, a lot of stuff is made overseas. We import way more than we export. So it's going to involve importing. And importing, you have to think about like, logistics, the timing of things, as well as all the inland costs, customs duties, the freight, all that other stuff. So there's a lot more things to consider, as well as dealing with overseas factories. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are super interested in white labeling, right? How can I just get some products from overseas for the lowest cost possible and then bring them over here? The biggest thing about this is the risk and reward factor, right? So profit margins, they are of the highest when you are dealing in white labeling or private custom labeling. Now, the reason why it is high in white labeling is because you're getting your products directly from the factory, directly from the source, right? But why it's even higher when it comes to custom private labeling, because when you are creating your own products, if you are offering really good value, if you have really good ideas, you could almost start dictating your own prices, because I have it and nobody else has it. And that is the power of exclusivity. So for the white labeling and custom labeling, we're going to do 2 standalone videos because there's a lot to talk about. For white labeling, my idea is to take you guys behind the scenes of exactly how I personally do white labeling. And then you'll see some of the back end of the Excel sheets, exactly, what these price quotes look like, how I deal with my sourcing agent as well as the factory, and essentially how I, put all the business deals together so that everybody's goals aligns with my goals. Because when that happens, I don't get taken advantage of. So bringing in stuff and whatever, is definitely way more complicated than all the domestic stuff, right? But again, there is more high risk and high reward. Now, as far as private labeling and custom labeling is concerned, I think we'll do an episode specifically more talking about innovation, right? Things to consider when it comes to innovating a product. Both of these business structures is way more about how to look at the market and spot gaps in the market, as well as predict future market trends. And I think I'll do some episodes on, exactly how to do that, to show you guys how I do things and how I consider stuff in order to start guessing, what stuff is going to sell. I've used this analogy in the past, right? Which is about what Wayne Gretzky has once said about, getting the puck on the ice. It's not so much that I'm faster than everybody. It's that I try to predict where the puck is going to be. So if I'm already there, I can act before other people do. So the idea is the same thing, right? We want to try to predict how the market is going to shift so that we could have a good positioning first to do our business. And that's how we make our money first. By the time, there's a lot of people who have concerns about white labeling and custom labeling that like, look, when I launch something, then, other people see it and then they're going to copy me, et cetera, et cetera. And then, I'm out in the cold, right? That doesn't necessarily happen in this. Number one, don't reveal how well you're doing to other people, right? So when they see your listing, they see that, it's slowly climbing and stuff, but they have to constantly monitor you and put you under, a microscope in order to see that happen, right? Usually when this happens, the guy who was the inventor of the item or started white labeling this item before other people, they've made their money for a couple of years already before other people catch on to this. Okay. So normally what happens when people say, hey, somebody's going to copy you and then do what you're doing or whatever, the answer to that is that sure, but by the time they do it, it's usually at the end of your trend anyways, and you have already made your money and you are ready to take on other projects. So let's talk about all the levels looking at it, at once, right? So let's talk about the bigger picture over here. When you look at all of these attributes between level 2 and level 5 is very similar, isn't it? Because all of the options are open to you guys. And that's what I love about having full creative control. You have so many more options at your fingertips to do. Look, my biggest criticism about flipping and reselling, right, is that too much time, way too much time is dedicated to sourcing and creating listings, because both the sourcing and the listing portion is way too inefficient. When you source, you're only sourcing one product at a time. When you list and sell, it's only for one product at a time. We have to start doing things in bulk. And when we do that and we have replenishable listings, number one, not only do we align our business more with what the algorithms actually want, we also get to do other things, right? Because look, if we're creating a listing that could sell many times over, so we're not spending our time creating listings all the time, right? And we're always able to get small bulk sources to large bulk sources of something. We're not spending that much time on sourcing either. So what do we do with the rest of the time? All the other green check marks and the options that are available to you, right? So with your free time, what do? I take good photos of my stuff. I create TikToks. I do Instagram reels and stuff like that in order to promote my business. What I love the most about doing all this stuff, right, is that once you get a lot of views and stuff on TikToks, on YouTube shorts and whatever, you could actually start making an extra side income just for making those advertisements to promote your own business, right? So there's a lot other things that we could get into. We could talk about doing like TikTok shops and stuff, doing like affiliate marketing, allowing other people to, jump on the bandwagon of selling your items so that, possibly either I give them a free sample or they buy the item from me and I sell it to them at cost. And they go ahead and then they do videos with affiliate links and stuff like that to further promote my business. Those are the places that we want to be. Now you're really leveraging a lot of things, right? There's quite a few people who are talking about flipping and reselling as far as using virtual assistants and stuff. Yeah, that is a brand new thing, right? And that's not bad because now you get to do a little bit more of flipping and reselling, but still, even with the virtual assistants and stuff, right? Those people are overseas. You are still here, still physically tied to every single good. So when you get the virtual assistants and stuff like that in flipping and reselling, sure, you've extended it a little bit further, right? Meaning that like if you were already capped at like doing 40 listings every day, now you could do 60 listings every day, or more. Maybe you could move up to like 80 listings every day because all you have to do is take the photos and then send it over to the VA in order to do your listings. So you've made it a little bit more efficient. However, it's still going to be capped at some point. Why not just pivot over to a better structure so that you still have way more options? There's way more things to do within a business than just reselling. And that is the point of this whole video, to try to show you guys what your options are and how limited you currently are. I hope this is very eye-opening for you guys. Let's come back up to the top for some final thoughts. All right, guys, so specifically this video about business structure is something I've been wanting to get off my chest for a very long time. And it's not something that I could just reply in the comments to somebody because it's so comprehensive of a concept to understand. But for many people who are stuck and stubborn in their ways about flipping and reselling, I hope they can now see a world of options that can be unlocked to you when you are trying to progress your business. And that is how we want to play the game, right? As we progress and get better and level up, more abilities unlock for us. And when that happens, the possibilities are endless. Anyways, guys, that is the video. Let me know if you enjoyed that. If you did, please give it a like. And if you learned something, please consider subscribing. As always, I'll see you guys in the next. Take care.